credit cards get compromised all the time. If he doesn't notice it, then let's do 25 this week. If he doesn't notice it, let's do 50. If he doesn't notice it, let's do 100. So they try to find that threshold.
Yeah.
And they may do 150 and you catch 150.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, 150 was too high. Let me go back down to 100. He's not going to notice 100. So I'm just going to fly below the radar. I'm going to charge $100 for him on his credit card every month. And it got to a point where there needed to be an IT leader at the table, but really being a decision maker, an influencer.
Yeah.
When I moved into that CIO role, that's really what that is about. Hey, how do we become a good, strong business partner? How do we make sure that we have a seat at the table? How do we make sure that we're moving this company in the direction that we're supposed to be going from a technology standpoint?
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Custom Journeys podcast. My name is Andrew Baines. I'm very excited to have a very special guest today, Marcus Manning. He is the CIO, or Chief Information Officer, for Smart Financial Credit Union. So I'm very excited to learn about what it takes to become CIO, some of the different challenges and things that Marcus has overcome throughout his career, and even like just what a day in a life looks like for a CIO. So very excited to be joined with him today. Before we get into it, though, make sure we got to do the bookkeeping. Like, subscribe, share this with somebody that you know. Very insightful conversation. Hope you guys enjoy it, so stay tuned. But now that we got all that out the way, the man of the hour, Mr. Marcus Manning. How you doing today, Marcus?
I'm doing great, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you coming out, man. I know you got a lot of things you could probably be doing today. I'm sure you got plenty of emails and meetings and stuff like that, so I appreciate you making time. But man, Smart Financial Credit Union, obviously you guys are in the financial services industry, and like I said, CIO. A lot of people may not know like what just CIO does. So what is like a day in the life like for you? What does that include?
Every day is different, man. So my role with the organization, I'm the Chief Information Officer. So I'm really responsible for the strategic plan, the roadmap, the long-term strategy for technology when it comes to the financial organization. That really entails, hey, what does your development strategy look like? What does your networking telecom strategy look like? What does your cybersecurity strategy look like? Day-to-day operation, what are the type of capital investments we're going to make moving forward with technology? So there's a lot that goes into my role. Every day there's something different. Mm-hmm. One of the things that people kind of don't think about is the people part of that. So when you think of technology, you think of technologists, you think of hey, you have developers, you have engineers, you have cybersecurity experts. That's all and well, but you also have a team that you have to manage as well. So the soft skills and the people side of it is something that I spend a lot of time on. And I think that's really the crux of having any great organization, not necessarily just a technology organization. It's really taking care of your people. So that's really what I focus on a day-to-day basis, as well as technology. And then expectations from the company and from the board as well. So our board of directors have high expectations of our technology. Because as you can imagine, I don't think any company can function well nowadays without technology. It's no longer a nice to have. It's part of the fabric of a company. So there are high expectations from our board of directors as well. So that's one of the things that's always on the forefront of my mind.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I know, I tell people every company is a tech company at this point. Even churches, if you look at it,
Absolutely.
They live streaming things. There's no longer just tithes and offering through a gold donation basket. You got the app in the gold, you text to give and everything like that.
The app, the website, yeah. But our church would say there are 3 ways to give, or 4 ways to give: text to give, on the app, on the website, and you can still walk up with your envelope if you want to.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Technology is in every facet of, I'd say, every business nowadays.
Okay, good point. So, and I like the point that you made about and we'll get into it some more, but the people part of it is so important, right? Because it's not just the ones and zeros, or it's just the technical things like that. You got to be able to lead a team of people. You mentioned board of directors, obviously the rest of the people in the C-suite, but who else do you kind of interact with on a more daily basis? Is it kind of you and then the VPs or the directors, or are you even dealing with people on the mid-management and below in terms of
So on a day-to-day basis, my peers so I have the CEO who I report directly to.
Yeah.
And then I have my peers are the chief marketing officer, we have a chief lending officer, a chief credit officer, and a chief operating officer. And the chief operating officer actually reports to me. And that's from what we call e-services, because as we mentioned, the fabric of a company really is a big mixture of technology as well as business operations. So it just made sense for the CIO to report directly to me. So
Okay.
that's my peer level, and that's my reporting up. Reporting down, I have senior VPs, I have VPs, and a couple of directors that report to me, and then they have direct reports as well. So that's really
Okay.
the structure of the organization.
Okay, good stuff. The last question, kind of along this line, is CIO or tech, cybersecurity. You mentioned some of those things. When you see things like the MGM resort getting hacked, and there's hacks like happening all the time. I'm assuming that the CEO and people on the board is like looking at you like, "Hey, Marcus, are we prepared in case something goes down? Like, what do we do in case somebody does like a cyber ransom or whatever it's called, and they're like trying to hold us hostage or whatever the case may be? Like, is that kind of how some of that happens?"
It is, and we're prepared. I've seen a quote, and I hope it doesn't apply to us. It's not a matter of if you're going to get hacked or if there's going to be ransomware. It's just a matter of when,
Yeah.
right? And there are several things that we do in order to prepare for that. Number one, we have cyber insurance. A lot of people don't know that you can get insurance for a cyber attack. So,
Okay.
Small, medium, even large corporations, there are policies out there that you can get. So if you do get attacked or you do get to a point where there's some ransomware and, people holding your data for hostage, then there are some insurance policies that could help you get through that.
Okay.
Second thing is our lines of defense. We have several lines of defense. I won't go into too much detail, but there are several layers of security that you have. So it's not like, okay, hey, if I just put the key in the door, I'm going to open the door. Well, there's one door, then there's another door, then there's another lock, then there's another safe. So there are several layers that we have. Not saying that it's impossible, but there are several layers that we have. And then also we have what we call two-factor or even three-factor authentication. And a lot of times you see it with other corporations. Not only do you log into our systems, but we're going to send you a token or we're going to send you a text message and say, hey, Andrew, is this really you? We see that you're trying to log in. So we use that throughout our organization as well. And then the third strategy that we use is rehearsal. So we have tabletop exercises that we do. So, hey, let's simulate an actual activity to see what we would do to react to whatever the activity is. So we do those periodically as well because, it's almost like, and I hate to say it, but I will, when I was working in the airline industry, we would have emergency exercises to prepare for a plane crash.
Yeah.
And you would get to the point where we had dummies that were out there. We had ambulance. We had fire trucks. I mean, we had to notify the city that, hey, this is only emergency response exercise. We didn't have a plane crash. We're only going through the exercise. But we actually walked through the activity. So we do that in our organization as well. Let's walk through. If something were to happen, we see that somebody has access to our core system. What are we going to do? What's step one? What's step two? What's step three? What's step four? What's step five? So on and so forth.
Gotcha. I think that's smart, man. I mean, I guess it's just like a fire drill you would do in school, like
Absolutely,
even
yeah.
simplifying it down to that.
Yeah.
Just making sure people are prepared. Do y'all even go like as like detailed into doing like simulated like phishing campaigns? I know a lot of times that can be like one of the ways people get got. And I almost got one time. So I know some people. I work at Rice.
Okay.
I know some people that are like in the provost and vice provost, and somebody reached out to me and I was like, I don't know this number, but I know this person.
Yep.
And I sent it to somebody else I knew and I was like, hey, is this real? And he's like, no, don't respond.
Yep.
And like literally 5 minutes later, an email gets sent out. Hey, we received the email that said such and such. I'm like, first of all, I'm glad they didn't put my name in there because they kind of put me on blast that it was me they was talking about. But I think it was good to know that, hey, they have some like measures in case like people are getting attacked.
Absolutely.
But do y'all even go that detailed?
Absolutely. And it happens all the time. It's interesting because there are so many tools that we have out there to play defense.
Yeah.
Well, those same tools that we have access to, the bad guys are playing offense with those same tools.
Yeah.
So you kind of play this cat and mouse game, if you will. But from a phishing standpoint, yes, we do periodic phishing campaigns. We don't tell people when we're going to do it, and we don't tell them how it's going to happen because a hacker's not going to call you and say, hey, Andrew, I'm about to send you this email. Don't click on it, right? So
Of course.
that would kind of defeat the purpose.
Yeah.
But they're getting so sophisticated now. And, if you think about it, and I try not to think about it too much, it's really scary at this point. I had a situation to where, a true story, someone sent an email to our payroll department saying, hey, I've changed banks. I need you to start sending my payroll check to this bank account. Well, I work for a credit union, so payroll knows, number one, Marcus, we know you wouldn't send us this type of email. Number two, you know there are processes for changing your direct deposit. So 2 red flags right off the bat, right? But they call me and say, and they sent me the email. And what happened, we have tools that can identify, what IP address did this come from? Was it a mask IP address? Things of that sort. The person got my information off of LinkedIn. So they got the email off of LinkedIn, got my cell number off of LinkedIn, and they put 2 and 2 together. So that's what they do. Sometimes in order to play defense against hackers, you have to think like a hacker. Yeah. If I wanted to be a professional hacker, I could, but that's just not in my cards.
Yeah.
But what they'll do is they'll take different pieces of information that's public. And it's getting to the point now where AI is really a game changer, not only for the people that are using it for good, but people that are using it for bad as well. I'll give you a perfect example. The video that we're doing right now, and I'm not a big social media fan, but if I were to go out to YouTube, I could take a snippet of this video and audio. I could create a video and I can send it on Marcus's behalf. I can change Marcus's words, but I'm going to use AI to use Marcus's tone inflection, to use his image, and I'm going to send out a deepfake video. Nobody will ever know that that's not Marcus. That's how sophisticated and how complicated it has become. So those are the type of things that we have to look out for from a financial standpoint. And there are things that just, for my personal values, and I'm pretty sure you feel the same way, there are 3, if not 4 things that you don't mess with when it comes to me. One is my faith, one is my family, one is my finances, and the last one I would say, it doesn't start with an F, but my physical wellness. I've gotten to and you and I kind of talked about that, to the point where I have a family that's depending on me, not only from a financial standpoint, but I need to be around to make sure that they're going to be okay. So those are the things that I don't really compromise on, and I'm pretty sure others feel the same way. So I take that mentality when it comes to people's finances, right? Because there are some people that could afford to get their bank account wiped out. They have parents, or they may have other forms that, hey, I can go to this person and they can help bail me out. Well, there are some people that this is it. I don't have anybody to call and say, hey, my bank was hacked, all my funds are tied up. What do I do? So we need to keep that in mind, especially with the segment that we're focusing on from our credit union standpoint, that, these are their livelihood that you're protecting, not just, another dollar. So.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. And I agree with you on those 4 things as well, especially, actually all 4 of them, honestly. But I agree with you wholeheartedly there. It's crazy. I've seen some of the deep fake videos. Like, I think I saw one with Obama, or maybe one with Trump or something like that. I've seen a few of them actually, where it's like, man, this is kind of crazy that it looks like this.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so many different benefits or pros to content, but I am aware of that, because it's like, even just the audio thing. I heard a report one time where they were like, people are getting scammed just from phone calls.
Yeah,
I get phone calls all the time that they're really close to my phone number. Like, it'll have the first 6 numbers, but then the last 4 will be slightly different. And so I can imagine somebody that knows part of my number, they pick up and then they hear a voice that sounds like me and say, oh man, I got such and such, my phone, whatever. Hey, can you Zelle me some money or whatever real quick?
Yeah.
It's
and it was another situation, and I've seen this. I mean, this is public information, to where people will call you and you'll say, hello, 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 and they're recording your voice. And they've had it to where I know of at least 3 instances where they have that voice will call a family member and say, hey, I'm in trouble. I need you to send money to this particular location.
Yeah.
And if you don't know that, say and I hate to say it, but I will, but say if I got a call right now from my daughter, it's a recorded session of her voice, and I don't know that, and somebody say, hey, I need you to send me 10 grand. I have your daughter right here. I'm probably going to freak out, right?
Of course.
And I can call my daughter, and she may be in class right now. Well, if I don't call her, then now I'm like, okay, is that really my daughter? Is it not?
Yeah.
It sounds exactly like her.
Yeah.
I don't think it's her, but like I said, the scammers and the bad guys are getting really, really, really sophisticated.
Yeah. And I'm man, you got me kind of. I'm
Not
like,
to
man.
scare you, but it happens. It
Yeah,
happens.
yeah,
It
yeah.
happens more than we think, and because I'm in that world, I see it probably more than the normal person. But yeah, it's definitely out there, and it's definitely happening without a doubt.
No, you got me kind of thinking because I sometimes I get phone calls and I'll say hello, and I'll pause. And I don't hear nothing, but then I'll try to change my voice and say hello, and so just so like in case somebody trying to record me because I've heard of that before, and I'm like, yo, this is wild, like where this technology is getting.
Yeah.
Even like the editing software that I use for this podcast, it can they call it overdub. Like it'll record because I got hours of my voice recorded now, so it can basically, let's say I said something, I said, hey, the sports and outdoors is broken, but I'm going to say the academy. I can go in there and copy sports and outdoors and just type academy, and it'll use my voice and say academy.
Yeah.
So it's like the technology is there, obviously.
Absolutely.
So I'm like, man, it's creepy,
Yeah.
like some of the stuff that can happen there. And I think a lot of times, to your point earlier, the scenario you outlined where like somebody use your email and your phone number, like I think the issues kind of come where you're complacent or you're comfortable. Right, because like you may two coworkers know each other, they know what's the protocol, but they'll be like, "Hey man, can you go ahead and change this real quick?
Exactly.
I just need to like whatever.
Yeah.
Can you take care of that for me?" Whereas like it may be certain steps. It's like, yo, you got a friend over there, just like, hey, help me out, do this real quick.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I got you.
And that's actually what happened with the MGM breach. Somebody simulated an employee and call, and don't quote because I don't know if this is exactly how it transpired, but for the context of the conversation, somebody called the help desk saying that they were an employee. So they got an employee name from MGM saying, hey, I'm Marcus Manning. I work for MGM. I work in the IT department. I need you to change my password. Well, they didn't validate that. They just said, okay, here's your new password. Oh, I don't remember my ID either. Can you give me my ID? Oh, absolutely. Well, now I've given you the ID and the password to get to my network, and I didn't ask you any questions. Because you told me that you were an employee.
That's
and
wild.
You worked for MGM.
You ain't asked me what my mother's maiden name was, my kid's birthday, nothing.
None of that. No.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're at a point now, man, where people are so focused on having things fast and so focused on the right now.
Yeah.
Some of the due diligence that we have to do, it frustrates some people. It's like, why are you asking me these questions? I mean, I told you last week that my address is this, or I told you last week that my mother's maiden name is this. Well, these are the reasons why I'm asking you, because if I don't ask you and something happens now, I'm liable, I'm on the hook, even though it's an inconvenience for you. This is the best thing for you in our organization. So when you explain that, it kind of helps. But people want things right now. It's like, well,
that's a good point.
Yeah, I don't want to type in my password. I'm going to use biometrics and can I just look at the phone and the phone opens? I don't have to type in a password. Well, you can. What if you're asleep and somebody comes up to you? Not that happens. And
they were trying. I remember hearing about especially the women. The women were trying to unlock that fella's phone. Like, let me wait till he go to sleep.
Well, hey, I'm out of that game. I've been out of that game for a long time.
Look, me too. I'm not saying it was me, but I heard the stories, But yes.
It's a conundrum, man. It really is. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer to it. It's one of those things where, look at what your situation is and try to figure out what the best solution is for your particular situation. Because it's not a cookie cutter approach for every organization. Some organizations are willing to take more risk than others. But, like I said, when it comes to people's finances, our risk level is very, very, very low.
That's good to hear. Because, finances, like you said, I mean, that's one thing people don't play about. And my wife be checking bank statements all the time. She be like, what is this $7 charge from the NFL Plus? What is this?
Absolutely.
I didn't sign up for this. And I'm like, oh, babe, my bad. I used the wrong card. All kinds of stuff. So,
you have to, man. You have to, yeah. I mean, because everybody, well, I wouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people that if you ask around, we have cards that are compromised quite often. I won't say how often, but credit cards get compromised all the time. All the time. People don't pay attention to their bank statements, and it's like, okay, well, it's a $20 charge here, and that's another method that some of the
here and there, a little nickel and dime, you kind of.
We're going to charge $20 to this credit card to see if Andrew notices it. If he doesn't notice it, then let's do $25 this week. If he doesn't notice it, let's do 50. If he doesn't notice it, let's do 100. So they try to find that threshold.
Yeah.
And they may do 150 and you catch 150.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, 150 was too high. Let me go back down to 100. He's not going to notice 100. So I'm just going to fly below the radar. I'm going to charge $100 for him on his credit card every month. He's not going to know because he has Netflix subscriptions. He has Prime Network subscriptions. He has DoorDash. He has Uber Eats. He has Uber Lyft rides. What's the extra $100? So now you're putting $100 in the bad guy's pocket and don't even know it.
Man, as you say that, like, a couple of things. One, I got a question about, like, where are we most, like, likely to get our credit card information scammed? I feel like it's gas stations. I be seeing, like, those little skimmers all the time that scammers be using. But the other thing, more of a statement, I feel like we've traded in the convenience or security for convenience.
Absolutely.
It's like you just listed off, like, 20 subscriptions that, like, somebody would typically have. Back in the day, it's like you was writing checks and you didn't have all those subscriptions. You had your light bill, your mortgage, your water bill, and your car note. You may, if anything else, is like you had like physical paper, like cash money you were paying or a check. Or if you did have a credit card, you didn't have like this many things. Like I got probably, well, between me and our circle, we probably got like 4 or 5 different subscription services. You know, I probably shouldn't say that on camera, but anyway, we got some different subscription services that we be using. And then of course, like you said, it's like other little things here and there, like NFL Plus, I pay for that. DoorDash, all that. So it's like,
and if you're not paying attention to it, it's very easy to get caught up. But some of the ways that we see from a scamming standpoint, number one, not in any particular order, is the skimmers that you talk about. And we actually have footage where we are recording somebody going into an ATM machine and putting a skimmer there. And it would blow your mind if you saw how they do this. So they take, they take the little piece that has your card reader on there. They'll take that out. And the screws are so small. I mean, they have tools. We have people that use torches now to where, they come in and they'll put their mask on and they'll get a torch. And I'm like, these people are really bold. I mean, it's like 2 a.m. in the morning, but still, I mean, you're in the middle of Houston and you're torching an ATM. Really?
I can see you.
It's crazy, yes. So, but they'll put the skimmers in there, and then there's a little camera that you put on top to where even if you don't swipe your card, so it's a magnetic strip, and I won't give you all the secrets, but the magnetic strip is being captured, and they have a cable that's wired to their computer, and it's sending those credit card numbers to the computer. Well, now they're getting sophisticated to where even if you don't insert your card in there, if you just put your card right there, there's a little camera about the size of my fingernail that's at the top of that card, and they're snapping it. So
that's
now they got your credit card number, and you haven't even swiped it in the ATM.
Is it safer to do like tap to pay than swipe?
So tap to pay, it is safer because there's a token that you have in there. You could do research. It's public information. It's a tokenized technology that Apple is using. I think they do a really, really good job, and that token is encrypted. And then it also, it changes every single time. So it's not like you have a token for the rest of your lifetime. So it scrambles it each time. So it's safer to tap. But they also have some situations to where, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but there's a device that you can use that actually you can tap somebody's credit card and it's capturing
I've seen those.
that information now.
Yeah, I've seen I think it was some company that was advertising like why you need to buy this and put it in your wallet. It was like it blocks
it's a little sleeve,
so
you just put it in that sleeve,
Interesting, man.
So yeah, I mean it's crazy, man, and it's not only from a technology standpoint, but from a human standpoint. We have some knuckleheads that are out there. If you go to a restaurant and you pay with your credit card, you got people that are keeping your credit card number and giving it to Johnny on the street next week and say, hey, give me $10, I'll give you 100 credit card numbers. I'm not really sure which ones work or not, but give me $10, I'll give you 100 credit card numbers.
Man, crazy.
It is.
If only everybody would use that knowledge, that creativity for good, man.
I say it all the time. I mean, if you're smart enough to create something like this, you should be smart enough to do something for the good of the world instead of trying to.
I agree. Man, that's wild. Okay, man, it's been a good conversation so far. I'm curious though, like, what got you to this point? Like, what even got you interested in like technology coming up?
That's a good question. So I was always coming, I was always a curious child. And I kind of talked about that. I was always curious. I was always trying to figure out how stuff work. I mean, I would take the fan apart and I would put it back together.
Your mom be like, "Why are you breaking my fans
That's
in my house, boy? What's wrong with you? That fan costs money."
Sometimes I put it back together. It would make a noise that it didn't make before I took it off. I'm like, okay, I didn't do something right here. So I was always curious as a kid. And then I think my curiosity kind of bled over into the IT space because, I built computers from scratch. My dad actually worked at NASA.
Oh, wow.
And he was a computer operator. Funny story. So we were out in the NASA area and he was like, okay, well, hey, let's swing by my job real quick. I'm like, okay, why not? We were out, in Kemah Boardwalk. Well, it was before Kemah Boardwalk was there, but in the area. I think we were coming from Galveston or something. Mm-hmm. So he, my mom, and my brother, we actually went to his office. So we walked through, and he kept his badge in his truck. So, he in a van, rather. So he took the badge out. We walked up. So we hit a badge, and we go through the glass doors, and then we go up to the 4th floor, and then we go up, and I see this. It's like a huge vault, like a big wheel, and you have to spin the wheel. I'm like, Dad, I thought we were coming
Where you working at?
So he walked up to it, and and he's like, I can't let y'all in here, but this is my office, and this is what I do, and I can't tell you what I do. Well, I didn't know at the time that he was a computer operation for Missions Control. And Mission Control was one of those top secret government agencies to where you couldn't, share information for exactly what he was doing. Yeah. But when I saw that, I'm like, computer operator, and you get to work in a vault. Again, that curiosity in my mind, I'm like, well, what is this computer stuff all about?
He knew what he was doing. That's a cool flex, though. I know it got you. He already knew who you were, curious Marcus. So he's like, all right.
Yeah. So I think my dad was very calculated. He would say some crazy off the wall stuff, man. And at the time, I didn't realize it, but now that I have kids, I was like, Dad, I hear you. I know why you did what you did, and I can appreciate it. So that really is where I really got the interest of, getting involved with computers is that experience right there.
Cool.
Yeah.
So your dad was like an engineer, or like what even got him?
So he had a degree. Well, he actually didn't finish his degree, but he did a program at U of H for computer operators. And mind you, this was back probably late 70s, maybe early 80s.
Okay.
So this was back when Unix and Linux was really first introduced. So he was he was a Unix Linux guy back then. Yeah.
I feel a little connection there. I know a little bit of Linux, a little bit of I know how to work LS, CD, little basic commands, make my way around the terminal. But that's cool, man. That's awesome job.
Yeah, and I mean he'd had certificates on the wall when he completed certifications and things of that sort. So I was like, okay, this is something that I want to look into. It seems like it's working for him, and I'm curious anyway. So yeah, that's kind of
good stuff. And then where'd you go to school at?
I went to Texas State.
Okay.
Yeah, it was actually Southwest Texas at the time. Got a degree in computer science. That was an interesting journey there in itself. Spent a lot of hours in the computer lab. Unfortunately, we really didn't have. Well, we had access to laptops, but they were super, super, super expensive.
Okay.
And we didn't necessarily have the means. Well, I wouldn't say we didn't have the means. Again, I think this was calculated. I'm going to have to tell you another story about my dad and me getting an apartment when I went to college. So my dad was very frugal.
Okay.
And he was the type of person that he wanted to teach you the lesson first.
Yeah.
And then once you learn the lesson, then he would give you something.
Okay.
So I told him I wanted a computer. He's like, son, do you know how much a computer costs? I said, I don't. He was like, well, don't you think you ought to look into how much a computer costs before you come asking for a computer? And at the time, man, I mean, this is probably an old 286 Pentium or something. I mean, it's like $3,500.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. He's like, well, you don't have access to a computer. You're getting a computer science degree and they don't have access to a computer. I was like, yeah, Dad, I hear you. I'll just go to the computer lab. Thank you. So it got to the point I was like, if I have to go to this conversation, just forget it.
Not worth it.
I'll just go, If my kids do that to me, Dad, it's like, Dad, if we have to have this conversation, then it's not worth it. So spent a lot of time in the computer lab, spent a lot of time, writing code, spent a lot of time doing projects, real world projects at the time, which is, I think, was very, very, very helpful and very beneficial. Of course, and you and I talked about this before the recording started. It really helped me when I got into the real world. So it wasn't just, hey, I'm writing code, I'm writing, C, C++, Visual Basic, Fortran. They probably don't even use these languages anymore.
I used a little bit of Fortran in college,
Yeah.
believe it or not.
Yeah.
Fortran 77 or 97. I don't know. Man, it was something else.
It is.
It was completely different than the Python and the MATLABs of the world that I was learning.
Exactly. And even my assembly code class, I'll never forget it. It was just, hexadecimal. So it was just, your output was A's and B's and ones and zeros. And
Goodness.
yeah. And if you didn't know what you were reading, people were like, well, what is this? It just doesn't make sense to me. So we've come a long, long, long way.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things about being in this space. You have to always be curious, and you have to always be a learner. This is not one of those industries like, hey, I have an accounting degree and, general accounting practices haven't changed in 50 years.
Yeah.
You can't say that about technology. There's some things I studied in college that don't exist anymore. I mean, cell phones are perfect, smartphone, perfect example. I had the old brick phone that was, $15.99 a minute if you wanted to use it. And now it doesn't exist anymore, So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. No, that's a good point, man. And I think I echo your point that like it's great that you got that real world experience like early on, because I don't know what happened along the way, but like when I was in college, we didn't get that. It was like you had theoretical, what was taught in the classroom. Sometimes you may be taught by a person that never actually worked in industry, just went master's, PhD, professor. So you kind of lost some of that unless you got an internship. And I always encourage people to get internships or whatever
Absolutely.
they can to get that real world experience.
And I'll never forget my senior program was my last developer class. I actually wrote an interface for an inventory system. So we had a new student center that was built there, and I spent a lot of time over there for several reasons, and they needed an inventory system. So they came to us and said, hey, can you get your computer science majors to write us an inventory system? And that was one of my senior projects, and I'll never forget that.
Nice.
Perfect hands-on experience. And, they use it as a prototype. I don't know if they actually continue to use it, but after I graduated, that was one of the things like, hey, this thing may work out for me.
That's good. I think it's a perfect use case because it's like colleges are always working on something, like their businesses or companies themselves. So it's like,
Absolutely.
hey, you're going to outsource this, but why not let the students like take a first shot at it? Whether it's, you got to build a new building. It's like, hey, let's have these architecture students come in and map out how this can look and everything like that, all that kind of stuff. So,
and of course, we had advisors. Some of our computer science professors had been there, 30, 40 years. So, of course, they're going to put the guardrails up and make sure we don't do anything crazy.
You don't want that final code being put, yes, here you go. The freshman worked on this.
Yeah, and it looks like freshman code. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Real quick, what's your favorite language that you've used over time? You mentioned a lot. You mentioned Fortran.
I did. I would say Visual Basic.
Really?
Because it got to the point where, when I was writing code, you had to write code and then you had to compile your code. And, a lot of times, a lot of these debugging programs that they have now, they didn't exist then. So I had to go back line by line. Okay, I missed a comma here. Or Mr. Paren here, or Mr. Bracket here, So, but as Visual Basic developed and came along, they would highlight, okay, you have an open paren here, yellow down here, you missed a paren, so put it here. Or if you have a commented statement that you forgot to comment out here, so it's running into your code, so things of that sort. So I would say VB would probably be the best one.
Yeah, I had some friends. I never used it, but I had some friends in college when I was working on my master's degree. They were using Visual Basics quite a bit. I just used MATLAB, Python, Fortran, and JavaScript.
Yeah,
that was it. But honestly, that was how I got my first job out of college, was being able to know like some of the different technical skills that a lot of that we weren't even learning in the classroom. And so companies, when I was applying, some of them were like, hey, okay, this is awesome. You got this background, but you have an mechanical engineering background, but you know how to code. Let's have a conversation.
Sure, absolutely. So, yeah. And it's like I said, I think it's maybe not coding in itself, because, we have some technologies that's considered no code, so you don't actually have to write code anymore. If you could just kind of come up with pseudocode or algorithms, then the code will write itself, if you will. That's kind of how sophisticated it's getting. But as we mentioned earlier, from a technology standpoint, there's no business that I can think of today. I mean, McDonald's even have kiosks to where they don't have employees in the restaurants anymore, and that's nothing against McDonald's, but I mean that's fast food that's using technology. Who would ever thought, right?
Yeah.
So, but technology, I think, is the fabric of every company, and I think it's going to continue to be that way.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. So I tell people all the time, even if you don't purely go for a tech job, you need to be comfortable with it. You need to be learning about it because obviously this is 2023. ChatGPT is like the best thing since sliced bread.
Absolutely.
And everybody and anybody is trying to figure out how to use it.
Yep.
Some people are putting their sensitive proprietary information in it that they probably shouldn't. But everybody in the world at this point pretty much is using it. So it's only going to get more advanced from here. So definitely people need to get familiar with it.
Absolutely. It's funny because my wife, and she's an excellent writer. I think she could have been an English major. She speaks very well. She writes really well. And she's like, honey, I used ChatGPT the other day. I was like, did it write better than you? And she's like,
come on now. Don't play with me.
She's like, no, but it sounds really, really good. I was like, yeah.
That's the thing. It's a good starting point. I'm not a good writer at all. So I'm like, look, I need to write this. Help me out.
Yeah.
And it's just a feedback loop from there. And refining it. So.
And I don't know, man. I have mixed feelings about, and because I'm in the IT space.
Yeah.
I have mixed feelings about it, and I'm somewhat old school too when it comes to education, and I kind of need to get out of. Well, I don't know. Let's put it this way. So because I do see systems crash, because I do know that vulnerabilities are out there, what if you go to the grocery store and all the cash registers are down, or all the POSs or point of sale systems are down. You can't tap your card. You can't swipe your card. You have to pay cash.
Yeah.
If you have a bill that's, let's say $40.75, and I give somebody a $100 bill, is that person going to be able to give me exact change back? Because I've seen it. I've give somebody, the bill may be, $15.75, and I give them a 20, it'd be like $15.75.
Goodness. We lost the basic math.
Yes. I'm like, are you kidding me?
No, that's true.
And I have to tell them, like, hey, this is what, this. And
you telling them to change.
Yeah. But because
give me my $4.25 back. Go back to class.
But because we're so dependent on technology, I think some of the fundamentals we're starting to lose. I mean, if you think in school, subject-verb agreement, right? If ChatGPT is going to write your paper for you, do you know?
Ooh, I struggled, boy. I was a beast at math and science, but English, I was like, oh Lord, subject math. So you got a good point. It has to be a balance.
It does, absolutely. I agree.
It has to be a balance.
I agree.
That's a good point. And I be getting mad. Kroger is the closest grocery store to my house, and I swear they're already there. They got two on both ends. They have like just self checkout. They may have one lane every once in a while. I'm like, yo, this is backed up. Can somebody open up?
I'm the same.
Is there
way,
a person
man.
in here
Especially
that's not?
If you go in, so they close the doors at 8 for security reasons, is what they say.
Yeah.
But if you go in the grocery store like at 10 p.m., nobody's there.
Bro, I'm like,
it's like one person is sitting, next to the kiosk, and if you have a problem, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And here I am with this huge bag of groceries, a basket of groceries. I'm like, okay, I have to bag it myself. I'm going to give you $100, and I'm so I'm getting frustrated. You got to put the bag on the floor and then get another bag. So
and they don't let the thing talk about, please place bag back on scale. It's like all of that. The convenience,
Yeah, but I think you're right when you say that there needs to be a balance. We need to find a happy median somewhere.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, good stuff. Hey, so you're obviously in a leadership position now, like from college to now. What was that first leadership role that you kind of had, like in the work world?
That's a good point. So when I was with Exxon before they actually merged with Mobil, I was on a contract with a company called Decision One, and this goes back to people giving you an opportunity and people taking a chance on you. I was in my 20s, and we had an account with Exxon, and it wasn't your typical, business development sales account. We were actually doing IT operations for a certain segment of Exxon.
Okay.
And we actually had network engineers. We had a couple of what we call them desktop support analysts, and then we had a service desk or a help desk. And I started out on the engineering side, the network engineering side. So I was the network administrator, if you will, and did that for about 9 months. And then our account executive came to me and he was like, Marcus, you know what? They seem to really like you here. And we need an account manager to run the entire account. I can't do it myself because I have other accounts. But, what do you think about that? And at the time, I want to say it was 22 of us. And, I told him I was up for the challenge. And, and he sat me down. He said, hey, these are some of the things that you're going to experience. You don't know this now because I keep you guys sheltered from this. But if you're going to lead this team, these are some things that you need to know. So we talked about, the politics, the bureaucracy, the red tape, things that go on in corporate America. So that was really my first experience in being in a leadership role in corporate America. And the guy his name is Ken Mackey. We still keep in touch. I haven't talked to him in a while, but we still keep in touch to this day. And I give him credit of giving me that opportunity because he didn't have to.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this guy's well liked, he's pretty polished and, he has some leadership potential. But he could have very easily gone out and put the job description out there and found an account manager. But he gave me that opportunity. And that's really the first opportunity that I had in the corporate world from a leadership standpoint. But I've always had leadership roles coming up through school, student council, math club, not necessarily your typical, jock persona, if you will, because I played all sports. I played a little football in college as well. With my fraternity, I was the president of the fraternity. So I was in leadership roles throughout, a lot of my, junior high, high school, even in college. But when I was there at Exxon as that account manager was really my first time, in corporate America, taking on a leadership role.
Was that even on your radar? Like were that something you were even thinking about or trying to see, hey, how do I become a leader here? Or were you just like, hey, I just want to be a good network engineer? Or would you kind of already have that on the horizon?
That's interesting. And I've never had a particular role or a particular position that I was targeting for throughout my entire career. I never came in and say, hey, I want to be a CIO in 15 years. Or, hey, I want to be, a systems engineer in 5 years. That never really crossed my mind. My dad always instilled within me, and I do it with my girls too. Whatever you commit to, you give it your 100% best. I don't care what it is. If we go outside and Marcus and Andrew say, hey, we're going to go pick up trash on the side of the road today. Well, we're going to give that our 100% regardless because that's something that we committed to. So every role that I was in, I was 100% committed to it, and not just committed to it in the sense of, hey, I'm going to show up to work on time. I'm going to take, the allotted time for lunch. I'm going to leave on time. Not trying to take advantage of the system, if you will.
Yeah.
My attitude is more or less, how can I make a difference? Okay, this is your job and this is what you're tasked to do. But if I were to leave here tomorrow or leave here next week, I want to leave whatever that job or that role was better than what it was before I got there. So that's always been kind of my mantra, my mentality. How do I make things better? How do I make a difference? Not just going to a job and performing a task. And it's always been that way throughout my career.
Interesting. I think that's a great mindset to have. It's not just going and clocking in, clocking out. It's like, hey, how can I make the best of my time while I'm here? And I think obviously people paid attention to that throughout the course of your career and were like, okay, Marcus is like, he's doing stuff. He's not just, going through the motions or whatever as a coach or a parent would tell you. So I think that's awesome. It's obviously played out to your benefit in the end. I think it's great that supervisors saw that in you before you even mentioned it or whatever. Because I think a lot of times that's where, obviously you were prepared for that opportunity, but sometimes it's, having those people that, see something in you that you may not have even voiced yet, or that you may not have even thought yet. Like, hey, Marcus, you're a leader. Like, why don't you think about leading this? And one question I did have in particular, a team of 22, you're pretty young in your 20s. I'm assuming that there were some people in there that were probably at that company longer than you have maybe been alive at that point or something like that.
Absolutely.
But how did you kind of judge that or handle that? Because that's something I think a lot of recent college grads don't really think about, or they're not really prepared for. You're 22 to 24 coming out of college,
Yep.
and some people, especially if you're an engineer, you may have to manage like some technicians or, some operators or whatever the case may be that have been at that job longer than you've been alive.
Yep.
Like, so how did you kind of handle some of that, the
And it's
generational
interesting.
gap?
Yeah, absolutely. And that definitely played out, and it's funny now because, one of the guys that I had some challenges with, he and I are really, really good friends, even to this day. We play golf together, and he's older than me. And I've never went in any situation feeling like, hey, I'm the boss. Hey, you're gonna do what I say do. I don't even like to use the word boss for
Same
several
here.
reasons.
It just sounds like oppressive. I'm like,
Right.
can we use supervisor? Every once in a while I'll say it, but I'll hate it. But
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. But I mean, and if we're using, urban vernacular and I'm with the fellas, then, you want to floss like a boss or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm cool with that. But as far as me being, the boss of you, I'm not the
Implies
boss
ownership.
of any, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm not the boss of anyone. So I've never gone into any situation that, I'm the boss. It's always, yes, I'm the leader, but we are one functioning team. And we are either going to succeed together or we're going to fail together. And my name is going to be on whatever we're doing. So, regardless of whether we get along or not,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, accountability is going to be on me. So I really need to figure out, how do I help create a high functioning team, and how do I help create this trust factor that needs to be an integral part of any organization. And I say that because if you come in, 24, 25-year-old, and you have people that's been in, these roles 15, 16 years, number one, who is this young guy coming in and telling me what to do? I'm not going to tell you what to do. I mean, we're all professionals. You know what your expectations are. And if you don't, then let's sit down and we'll talk about that. And, from a more practical standpoint, sit down, you have a job description. These are my expectations of you, and vice versa. What are your expectations of me as a leader? What is it that you want to see from me as your leader? And you have those authentic, hopefully they are authentic conversations. And if they're not, then how do you get to the point where people can really display their authenticity based on that trust factor, right? So, if you start a job tomorrow and your, boss or quote unquote leader says, hey, Andrew, what do you need from me? Well, I don't even know you, I mean, so can I really be open and honest with you? Or are you just giving me lip service and you're waiting on the next employee to come through the door? And that takes time. And I think you have to meet people where they are. And I think you have to develop that trust circle in order to really get to that really authenticity of anyone. Not saying that, we don't have to be best friends. We don't have to go to happy hour together. But if we're going to be a high functioning team, let's see if we can meet somewhere in the middle. Let me know what your needs are. I'll let you know what my needs and my expectations are. Let's build this trust factor, and we can go from there. So I actually went into it saying that, hey, I'm already coming in against what my dad used to say, a stacked deck, right?
Yeah.
So there are some things, there are some barriers, some walls that I'm going to have to break down. And the first way to do that is trust. The second way to do that is integrity. And the third way to do that is character. So I'm always a man of my word. So if I tell you I'm going to do something, then I'm going to do it. That really develops that trust factor. If you are depending on me and I'm almost loyal to a fault, if you will, then I need to know that I need to show up based on what your expectations are of me, within reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, I would say the communication piece is, if I totally understand where you're coming from and you totally understand where I'm coming from, and we have a mutual agreement, now we can move forward and we can function. So those are the way that I think I had to break down some of those barriers. And it wasn't only, the age barrier. There was a cultural barrier
Yeah.
as well. And then I would say, it's more, I guess, prevalent now, but back then, even the stigma of a young black man coming in being my supervisor. And some people were, within respect, they were pretty vocal about, hey, who is this young guy? They didn't put the black term on there,
Yeah.
but I can read between the lines. I see body language, and I see more than what you're telling me. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things, or some of the barriers that I had to break down, and I think it worked out for me.
Yeah, obviously, it's brought you to where you're at today, and I can only imagine like the challenges that came with the frustrations, probably the mentorship, even that you kind of had to leverage to make it through that.
Yep.
Because I've dealt with the age part for sure, where like I was an engineer walking into a plant, and I kind of took the same mindset as you. And to your point, I think I've never seen a leadership style where like somebody comes in or there's been a change in leadership and they instantly start making changes. I've never seen that work out.
Yep.
Like I think the best cases are always where people come in, they just take time to assess, see
Mm-hmm.
how things are working, talk to people, really try to understand like, hey, what are your challenges? What's the pain points? And like just observe. And I think I've even seen like Magic Johnson do that. I think he like when he's buying companies, even like I think he bought the what's that sorry team in Washington, the football team?
Commanders now.
The Commanders.
Yeah.
Yeah, he bought them, and I think he was saying like, hey, this first year we're just gonna kind of observe and see how things are going. Not gonna come in here and change the whole staff and everything
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, they had some deep rooted cultural issues, but I think that's the best way to go about it because you got to get buy-in from the people that's there. And you just go
Absolutely.
in day one talking about, hey, you doing that wrong, man. Like, who is gonna want to work for you?
Exactly.
Like, especially if you're a younger guy, like it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So that's good
Yeah.
feedback.
Yeah.
So I know before you became CIO of Smart Financial Credit Union, you were at another credit union before that.
Yes.
Kind of what can you kind of fast track me through that, like between your first leadership role and then that?
Sure, yeah. So after I left Exxon, I went to work for Continental Airlines. So that was
That's nice.
Yeah, that was probably one of the best companies that I've worked for in my entire career. I held several roles there. I had great leadership there, and that's really where I would say that the trajectory of my career really catapulted at that particular time. So when I was hired on to, it's interesting, and we went from what we call green screen or mainframe technology to client server base. So basically what that is you have a mainframe and you have what's called dumb terminals. And those dumb terminals, like we talked about the Linux and Unix earlier, those dumb terminals are literally just a dumb terminal that's connected back to a mainframe.
I got you.
So one of my first projects was to migrate from dumb terminals and mainframe. We still had a mainframe, but we had middleware that we tied into the mainframe to make what we kind of called a client server based technology or architecture. So that's when the PCs really came into play.
Gotcha.
And we had to actually set up a reservation center at several locations. Actually, I did some international travel with the airlines as well. So anyway, to make a long story short, I did that, and then I was moved into kind of what you call an application integration or application support role.
Okay.
And I was tasked with actually building the team from scratch. So, like I said, the opportunity, my boss put me in, he's like, hey, we need this applications team. We have developers, but we don't have this application team that kind of interfaces between our developers and our end users. So I created this team, had a $20 million budget, hired staff, and that team is still functioning to this day. That's kind of one of my proud moments. But again, it goes back to opportunity, right?
Yeah.
My boss or my leader saw something in me to trust me with that project, that amount of money, that amount of resources. So, moved into a director role, did that for a little bit, and then that's when the merger came about. So Continental and United merged. And, there was a lot of uncertainty as any type of merger. Of course, they say, hey, everybody's going to be fine and everything's going to work out great.
They got the same job title as me.
I could put two and two together. I know you're telling me that I'm going to be fine. I get that. So anyway, long story short. So I actually was hired on, or we interviewed for some of our roles. Not everybody interviewed, but I mean, all the way up to the CEO. We had two CEOs, we had two CIOs, we had two CFOs. So, these are two major corporations that are merging. So yeah, there's gonna be some overhead, whether you're telling us or not, there's gonna be. So, fortunately I was able to, keep my role, and I was hired on as a United employee. And then conversations came up, well, United has the headquarters in Chicago. And we can't guarantee you that you're not going to have to relocate at some point, but we're just going to give everybody a year to kind of figure it out. Well, I had a conversation with my wife. My wife went to school in the Midwest, not far from Chicago, and there's a reason why she moved from the Midwest down to Texas, because it's so cold.
I understand. I live in Detroit.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you get it.
I
get it. You get it. So that was like a 5-minute conversation. I said, okay, well,
you ain't doing that, baby. 5-minute conversation.
Yeah, we won't be moving to Chicago. So I was like, okay, well, it may be time to look into something else. But again, there was a great company, man, great culture, got an opportunity to grow. Great. I mean, I still keep in touch with some of the people to this day, So after that, I moved on to the healthcare industry. So I got a role as a director with Texas Children's Hospital, which was definitely a shift for me, because I had been in an airline industry for so long. I knew a lot about the airline industry, not only from a technical standpoint, because technology, regardless of what sector you work in, regardless of what industry you're in, technology is technology is technology. That's kind of my personal opinion. So the technology piece wasn't a big shift for me, but going from a customer service oriented position into a healthcare position was it was a shift for me, and it was a good shift for me, because there was a lot that I learned in that role, not only from a technology standpoint, but I also feel like in order to be a well-respected, not only an executive but a senior leader, that you have to know the business that you're in. I mean, I could know technology really, really, really well, but if I don't know how an airline operates, then it's kind of hard for me to connect with my business partners, because, if you go to talk about RASM and CASM, and, those are airline terms, and I don't know what those, so RASM is revenue per available seat mile, CASM is cost per available seat mile, so cost revenue model. If you don't know that, and you're in a conversation with your chief financial officer, and you don't know the finances of the company, it's kind of hard for me to add value from a technology standpoint when I don't know what value you need from me, right? So it's just like if Marcus and Andrew are talking, and you say, hey Marcus, I need a laptop, and I bring you a smartphone in here. It's like, well, a smartphone is not a laptop, right? But if I don't understand your business and understand what you're doing with your laptop, then it's kind of hard for me to meet your needs from a technology standpoint. So anyway, long story short, went into the hospital industry and learned a lot about the culture of hospitals, learned a lot about patient care. And it was one of those things where it took an emotional toll on me, because I have a really, really big heart. And when you see, even though I wasn't in the actual hospital itself, just being in the midst of people that are sick, even though you're doing a good deed, that just, it weighs heavily on your heart. Well, it weighed heavily on my heart. And I got to a point where, and there were some things that from a financial standpoint, so some hospitals, most hospitals are backed by some type of government agency. And at the time, Obamacare was still in its infancy phases, if you will. So some of the reimbursements for Obamacare were not necessarily thrust out from a hospital standpoint. So we got to the point where I had to cut some of my staff. And true story, I was in a meeting with physicians, and we were talking about the cost of rubber gloves. Like, wow, you're kidding me. So if we have to talk about how much rubber gloves cost, is this hospital really financially stable? I mean, if we're talking about the Kleenex boxes and the rubber gloves, are we hemorrhaging here? Are we set financially?
We haven't even got to the hundreds of thousands for equipment or salaries.
Exactly, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So when you start hearing those conversations, again, reading between the lines, writing on the wall, I'm like, okay, well,
Time to go.
Yeah, right. This may not be something because I'm all about flexibility, but stability as well.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I'm not a job hopper. I've never been a job hopper. So I'm like, okay, well, I've been with a company. I was with one company for 12 years. Another one was 3, and I left because of choice. But I don't want to have to leave somewhere because the financial disposition is not where I think it should be.
Yeah.
So anyway, left there, and I went to it was called TDCU, which is Texas Dow Employee Credit Union.
Okay.
And that's when I got introduced to the credit union space. And again, that's one of the things about technology. The skill set that you gain along the way, it really can traverse any industry that you want to go in. I mean, you're in the education sector, you got IT there. Hospital, you have IT there.
Mm-hmm.
Financial, you have IT there. Airline, you have IT there. Fast food, hospitality. So, pretty much any industry you feel like you are interested in or you want to go to, you have that skill set because technology is everywhere. So anyway, went to the credit union space and started there. Got hired in as a director role, and I had a team of infrastructure and architecture. So basically what that is I was running data centers. We migrated our data centers from on-prem to what we call a co-located facilities, which is one of my first big projects there. And then got
Is that
into
the same as cloud, by the way?
No, that's different. Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, basically so data centers, there are 3 options that you could have. Well, actually there are a lot more, but I'll simplify. One option is to have them what they call on premise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just saying, okay, all the computers in this building will have your data center that's behind this wall right here.
Yeah.
So it's in the same building that you run your business in, or the same buildings. The second option is to have a off-site facility, but it's still physical. So say, for instance, there are co-location facilities around the Houston area, and one of them happened to be across the street from Greenway Plaza.
Okay.
Yeah, it used to be Cyrus One, I think was the name. They've changed the name a few times. But basically what that means is you're going to take all your infrastructure, you're going to put it in this building, and they have another location that's in the Dallas area. So you really have, either active or active passive site. So if something happens to your data center here in Houston, the co-located facility is in Dallas. They'll just fail all your computer systems over from Houston to Dallas.
Gotcha.
And then the third option that you have now is what's termed cloud computing. And there are several options that you have. You can go 100% cloud. And basically what that means is it's the same concept as colo facilities, but it's a much broader scale. So what that means is that we have a data center that may be in China, we have another one that may be in Africa, we have another one that may be in South America. And you just give us your infrastructure and we'll put it in the cloud, even though there is some data center that's running that cloud technology.
Gotcha.
And you can have what's called a hybrid model as well. So if you want to keep some of your data center on site here, you can do that, and others you can put in the cloud, and we can really run both of those together if you wanted to.
Gotcha.
So that was, from an engineering, architecture, infrastructure standpoint. And then I moved into the data analytics role. So I managed the data analytics team at TDCU as well. And that's really getting into, the extracting data, transforming data, and presenting data, because it's to a point now where analytics is really the crux, I wouldn't say the fabric, but the crux of a lot of organizations. A lot of decisions are made based, or they should be, let me put it that way, should be made based on analytics. I mean, I was watching a baseball game the other day, and they have, hey, it's a 35% chance he's going to hit it over here, so let's move the shortstop this way. Or if it's a 75% chance he's going to hit it. And even the football game last night, it's like, okay, the analytics say he should go for it on 4th and inches, because there's a 72% possibility or probability that he'll make it. And he went for it and they made it, right?
Yeah.
So, not saying that data is the end all be all, but there are a lot of decisions that are made based, especially in financial institutions, that are made on data. So I moved into the data role. And then I got to a point where, based on my curiosity and based on just, the perseverance and the aspirations that I have, I find myself getting a little bored. I'm like, okay, well, I've done, pretty much every role I can do within the IT space. And yeah, I sat down, with my CI, because I reported directly to the CIO at the time. And, he and I had a conversation, and I was like, well, from a career progression standpoint, what other options do you see? Because we didn't have a VP role that I could work myself into. It was either, my role or his role. And
Are you leaving soon? What's going on?
and he was still new to the company. I'm like, I'm not trying to take your job, but I don't see any other career progression here for
Yeah.
me. So, and then that's when I started looking. And I had a ex-colleague that I knew worked at Smart Financial, and I saw that they had it was a CTO role at the
Okay.
time, and I reached out to her, and she's like, hey, I didn't know that you were looking. I was like, well, I've gotten to a point where I feel like I'm stagnant now. I've
Yeah.
done everything I can, and I don't have a clear-cut career path.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, well, let's talk. So we talked, long story short. So I was hired in as a CTO initially.
Okay.
And one of the big projects that I had was, because I had done it previously, was to move the data center from on-prem into a colo facility. I'm like, okay, well, I'm an old pro at this because I've done this before, right?
Yeah.
So we did that, and it was a huge cost savings. I think we saved close to $400,000 a year just based on that. So yeah, that was a good quick win for me. We really needed to build up our cybersecurity posture. We were talking about cybersecurity earlier. I had IT cybersecurity director that I promoted, and then we hired on a couple of analysts, and really got to the point where we need to fortify our fortress. Because, not saying that there are some gaps here, but when it comes to cybersecurity, you can never do enough. I mean, there's always more that you could do.
Yeah.
So that was one of the initiatives that I had, and then it got to a point where there needed to be an IT leader at the table, and CTO was not necessarily that role because it was more technology focused as opposed to business focused. So that's when I moved into the CIO role, and now the CIO role is one of those influencers at the board level. Before, I can't say that it was. I mean, yes, I was at the board meetings, and I would give the board, an update on cybersecurity, give them an update on how we're doing from a CapEx standpoint, from an OpEx standpoint. But really being a decision maker, an influencer.
Yeah.
When I moved into that CIO role, that's really what that is about. Hey, how do we become a good, strong business partner? How do we make sure that we have a seat at the table? How do we make sure that we're moving this company in the direction that we're supposed to be going from a technology standpoint? So it's a much broader role than just focusing on the technology piece.
Gotcha. No, I think that's a great analysis. I appreciate the comparison between the two because that's something I was kind of curious about between CIO and CTO. And I definitely think that it's important that, that conversation is happening at the board level. So it's not, because it's like you said, like we've said it a few different times, like where every business is now a technology business.
Yep.
And understanding like how that technology is impacting your bottom line. So I think that's very important. Man, you had quite a few impressive stops, and I think you had some really impressive opportunities that kind of helped you like propel your career to where you're at. Let's say your daughter, I know you have an older daughter in college now. Let's say she's decided, hey, Dad, I think I want to be a CIO. What would you kind of recommend as like that roadmap that she should potentially take to get to that point?
That's a good question. I don't think it's I don't think there's a cookie cutter approach to get there. I mean, I think if I could write a blueprint on how to get there, then everybody would be a CIO, right? Hey, just read Marcus's book and you'll get there, So, but I think there are several things that actually got me here. We hadn't talked about it actually on recording, but I've had a lot of favor when it comes to my faith, and God has shown me a lot of favor. So I can't say that I did it all on my own. I'm not the smartest person in the room. I don't claim to be the smartest person in the room. But I can tell you that I'm very loyal, very dedicated, and what you see is what you get. So that's one of the things. My commitment, my perseverance, my dedication, my loyalty, I think is really some things that help get me to where I am now. So that's one of the things. One of the words of advice that I would give her is be sure that you're committed. And when I say committed, I don't mean just sitting in the room. Committed means I'm in the room, I'm engaged, I'm making a difference, I'm a woman of my word. That's what I mean by commitment. The second part of that, I would say, is learn as much as you can. And I wouldn't say become an expert, because I don't think experts exist anymore in the technology world, because once you become an expert, then that technology is probably irrelevant. So I would say become very, very, very good, if not great, at your craft and what you do, and be a consistent learner. Because I know that we've had some situations, and we hadn't talked about leadership a whole lot, to where, hey, I send this guy on a project, he did a good job, so I'm going to promote him to a director. Or I send this guy on a project, he did a good job, I'm going to promote him to VP. Well, it takes more to be a CIO than just completing a good project or saving the company money. And it's unfortunate some executives got to that role because they did well on a project, or they know someone, or, they just happen to be in the right place at the right time. And not saying that I've earned everything that I have, but I've worked very, very, very hard to position myself to receive that when it did come my way. And it's one of those things, preparation should always be done before the opportunity, right? Because if the opportunity comes tomorrow and Andrew's not ready, then that opportunity may not come anymore. So you need to make sure that you're always prepared for whatever opportunity that you're seeking, or whatever opportunity you have as far as your aspirations are concerned. The third thing I would say is there are obstacles that you're going to come up against. It has not been an easy road, and I think anything worth having is not easy. So just be prepared for those obstacles, not saying that there is a right or wrong answer for any situation, because there are some situations that I've been put in that I didn't know I was going to be put in those situations, so I really couldn't prepare for something I don't know about.
Yeah.
So all I can say is just be prepared for the unexpected, or be prepared for situations that you may not plan for. Now, the ones you can plan for, we can write a script, we can tell you how to get through it. But the ones that you can't prepare for, the ones that you don't anticipate, just do know that they're coming, and do know that you're going to have whatever your foundation is that got you there. That's the foundation that's going to help you get over some of those obstacles, whether it's your morals, whether it's your values, whether it's your character. Just do know that those headwinds or those storms are coming.
Yeah.
But do know that you have that foundation to get you through whatever's coming your way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm honestly not too surprised anymore, but the more people I interview, the more people I talk to, is like your second point was definitely, well taken. Not necessarily being an expert, but learning as much as you can about a particular thing or industry from a technical standpoint. But the other 2 points were more so about the individual, about the personality, about the values and the soft skills that we like to call them, or the core skills.
Yep.
And I think that's something that I don't know if people, it's not as black and white, I guess I would say, as like, hey, go open that book and learn about Linux systems administration or whatever, or learn about calculus or whatever. It's like, it's about the people, the interactions. It's about who you are as an individual.
Absolutely.
And that's so much, it's not, I guess, more abstract, I guess.
Yep.
So that's the part where I think a lot of people, I don't know if they pay a lot of attention to that or put as much focus on it.
Yeah, and I think self-awareness is another key point that I would say. I mean, you need to know you, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't know you, then it's kind of hard for you to bring the best you to the table if you don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
And I would say don't lose that, because you have some people that, they feel like they have to compromise who they are in order to get what they want.
Okay.
And to that person, I would say, if you have to compromise who you are to get what you want, then that's probably not what you should be wanting. I mean, I can't make the decisions for you.
Yeah.
But if you have to compromise who you are to get something that you want, then that's probably not something that you should aspire to do. So, there's been some situations to where, I could have very easily lost my cool, or I could have very easily, fall into the persona of angry black man, right? Because there are some biases, whether they're conscious or unconscious, that you're going to experience in the workplace. I'm gonna just call it like it is.
Yeah.
There are, and there may be some prejudice that you're gonna experience, and there may be some obstacles that people put in front of you that you didn't deserve it. You didn't do anything to warrant it, but it is what it is. So, that's those are some of the things that you're going to have to figure out how to get over those hurdles without necessarily losing who you are. But that self-awareness, you knowing that, okay, I react in this particular situation this way, so I might not want to put myself in that particular situation anymore. Or this person has shown me who they are, so I need to take that when I'm dealing with this person.
Yeah.
So those things, be very well aware of how you react in different situations. Be very aware of your, not only your emotional intelligence, but your physical awareness as well, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to body language, you may think one thing, but your body is saying something different. And some of these things, I'm trying to get a little practical about it, because a lot of these things, if you don't have a high sense of self-awareness, then you're not really cognizant of, especially if nobody tell you, right? I mean, it could be something as simple as, if I'm sitting here slouching in the meeting and nobody tells me, well,
that's what's just comfortable to you, but to other people it may look like, you don't want to be
or
here.
If I'm just sitting here like this, now I'm closing myself off in other people's perception. No, I'm not. My shoulder's hurting from working out last night. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, those little things, those little nuances, they matter. So self-awareness, not saying that you have to be this person that you're not, but self-awareness and people's perception, especially at the executive level, is very, very, very important.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't know how well we as a generation or as a culture, like countrywide, nationwide, are at like self-awareness, but I definitely think it's something that we can improve on. Empathy is another thing I think we're really missing out on a lot of right now.
Absolutely.
My goodness. Yeah. But there's a lot of work that can be done. I don't know if that's something that we can change not that I don't think it will be changed, but something that will be changed like on an educational level, like in terms of K through 12 or college. But I definitely think there needs to be more of a focus on those like core characteristics and personalities, and not just purely the technical things. But yeah, I think that's a more detailed conversation.
Yeah.
One thing you did say earlier, it's not getting to the position where you're at. It's not just hopefully it's not just, hey, you solved this project well, or hey, you knew the right person. And we had a discussion earlier offline where you talked about, and it was interesting to hear you say it, because I never really thought about it. You told me it's not about just solving problems. And because I'm an engineer, I'm always looking for the problem and looking for the solution. So I'm thinking, hey, I'm a problem solver. That's a good thing to have. But you're like, it's not just about solving problems. It's about adding value. And I really had to think about that for a second. I was like, man, but I'm solving a problem. Isn't that good? But I don't want to put words in my mouth. And I think I would love to just kind of hear you kind of elaborate on that, like the importance of adding value and how that can help you throughout your career.
Absolutely. And, so we are, and I don't know if you've done this before, but I've taken several personality trait assessments, DISC profiles, Myers-Briggs, you name it, I've probably taken it. But from a problem solving is like my number 2 strength. So I'm a problem solver as well. Achiever is another one. And how you go from just being a problem solver to being somebody who adds value, it's how do you take things to the next level? And sometimes my wife gets frustrated. She's like, you're so extra with things sometimes. I know.
Look, man, I understand. I just got in trouble for that the other day. It was my son's birthday. Sorry to cut you off. It was my son's birthday. Hey, we ain't got no gift bags for the kids. I was like, we gotta go get the gift bag. Like, babe, it's only like 5 kids coming. It's fine. I'm in Kroger running around trying to get Hot Wheels for the kids and candy. He's like, you just do too much. And then like, at the end, it was like, see, anybody even use that.
Right.
But it's like,
right. Which I think is a perfect example. So that's the difference between solving a problem and adding value.
Yeah.
The problem solving was we need to get gifts. Added value is we're going to get gifts. We're going to get bags. It's going to look nice.
Yeah.
And they're going to enjoy it. So what do you do to take those extra steps to add the value?
So being extra is a good thing.
To me. Some people may disagree. I'll give you a real world example. So we're in a budgeting season right now, right? So, a CFO comes and say, hey, Marcus, give me your budget dollars for next year. So you have capital budget, which is, your investments, you get your return on your investments, you do your calculations good. Then you have your operating expenses as well. Hey, this is what it costs to do our day-to-day operation. And as you can imagine, I have the biggest budget in the entire company. It's been that way throughout my entire career because we spend a lot of money on technology, but the organization depends on us. So, it kind of gets into that conversation. Do you pay for what you need, or do you save money? I can save money, but we're going to walk around here, writing on tablets with pen and paper. Do you want to do that? I'm saving you money. I'm not spending on technology. But do we really want to be that type of company, right?
Yeah.
So going through the budgeting season, I could very easily say, okay, hey, here's our CapEx budget and here's our OpEx budget. The value that I'm going to add is here's our CapEx budget. We're going to get a 35% turn year over year on this particular investment. And we're going to decrease our operating costs by 10% because we're going to get rid of half the PCs and monitors that we already have here.
Okay.
So that's really the value that I'm adding to the organization, not just turning in a budget with OpEx and CapEx line items.
Gotcha.
So it's really I can't remember, it was a leadership class that I was in, and they were talking about a pickle. And they did a study, and one waitress came up and a lady said, hey, can I get a pickle? And she said, yes, you can get a pickle, but it's going to cost you $2.50. Another waitress came up, exact same lady. Hey, can I get a pickle? Sure, no thing. She brought her pickle out for free. She tipped the second lady, but she didn't tip the first lady because she tried to charge her. And the pickle was a little spear pickle about this big.
Yeah.
So it gets to a point where, is it that you want to add value to your restaurant so people will keep coming back? Or do you want to nickel and dime people so we can make sure the bottom line is where it's supposed to be, but people aren't going to come back, right?
Yeah.
So it's the difference between solving a problem and adding value. I don't think it's a right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
But it's really, what does value mean to the organization? What's valuable to the organization is what I mean by, that adding value. And I think that goes for just life in general, right? Hey, I want to be a person that when I leave the room or when I leave something, they say, okay, he left this better than what it was when he first got here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Great examples also, by the way. I mean, the second waitress probably got tipped at $2.50 plus whatever, so it's like factoring all that in. And I've even gotten charged for sauce at restaurants before. And I'm like, why y'all charging me for it?
Right. Yeah.
So all those little things matter, and it's not so much like the extra 50 cents or the extra dollar is not the issue. It's the fact that you're actually charging me.
It's the principle.
For
absolutely.
the principle of the matter.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Quick question: where'd you learn about CapEx, OpEx?
Yeah. So I learned about CapEx and OpEx. That was probably back when I built the team back at Continental Airlines, the application team that I was telling you about. Yeah. You have to have some type of business acumen when it comes to, like we talked about earlier, delivering technology solutions for, the business outcomes. And I took a finance class because I needed to understand how to run an IT budget. I can't just say, hey, Marcus, here's $20 million. What are you going to do with it? Well, I could. And the budgeting experience that I had was, hey, I run my budget. Well, my wife runs it now at my house, so I could do it in that sense. But I don't have capital investments. I don't have operating expenses in my house. I mean, I do based on the terminology, but that's not how we operate in that space. So I took a finance class, and I learned what OpEx is, and I learned what CapEx is, and I learned what ROI is in that finance class.
Gotcha.
And then when I was given that budget to build that team, I needed to know what does a capital investment mean? Because it wasn't only building that team, there was hardware that was involved. So how do you purchase this from a capital standpoint? What does capital mean?
Yeah.
And, how do you amortize that, which means, are we going to pay for it all up front or are we going to pay for it year over year? You can amortize it, 5 to 7 years. So we'll pay a certain amount for the next 5 years. And then you get into the depreciation as well. So, hey, this equipment that you're buying, what is the depreciation cycle? So if you're amortizing for 10 years, but it's going to be fully depreciated in 5 years, then now you have an asset, right? Or if hey, the depreciation is slower than your amortization, and now you may be losing money.
Gotcha.
So things of that sort. So yeah, and when I start making purchases on behalf of the company, I had to learn, be a good steward of finances.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. I've heard some of those different terms, like in real estate, because I've been
Mm-hmm.
looking into like real estate investments and things of that nature. But it's a you're setting a perfect example of like taking that initiative on your own, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be prepared for those opportunities as they came up,
Absolutely.
and that kind of just sets you apart even further. What when
And I was
you're
a math guy as well, so I got a computer science degree, but I have a math minor as
yeah
well, so
okay
that helps.
got a little leg up on the competition. That makes sense. Hey, so you're CIO, when you're interviewing VPs or directors, what are you looking for when you're making a hiring decision?
That's a good question. First thing I look for is cultural fit. That's
Okay.
that's that's number one, because I do feel like, like you said earlier, leading with empathy, you have to have, some type of empathy when you work with our team. So that's the first thing that I look for is, hey, how are you going to fit in with the culture of this team? Because, we, like I said, we don't all have to go and, drink beer or happy hour together, but we do have to be a high functioning team. So that's one of the things that I look for is it a cultural fit?
Okay.
Second thing I look for is technical aptitude. So the role that we're looking for, do you know the technology well enough to be successful? Not saying you have to be an expert, but do you know the role well enough to be successful? And even if you don't, do you have at least the baseline or the capability to learn? Because I can send you to training. You can learn technology, not a big deal, but you have to have at least a baseline.
Yeah.
So that's the second thing that I look for. The third thing that I look for is there are certain qualities or competencies that you have to have in order to be a successful technologist in our particular area or in our particular company. And those things that I look for are, like we talked about, culture fit. Number two, the technical acumen or capability. And then number three is what type of personality do you have? And we do personality assessments. I don't want to call them tests, but we do personality assessments. So that's based on, what are some of your strengths? And we don't call them weaknesses, but we call them, areas for improvement, or what are some of the opportunities that we have. So say, for instance, a lot of folks that work in technology are introverts.
Yeah.
And not saying that that's wrong at all, but at least as a leader, that helped me know that, hey, this person is an introvert. This is how you can work really well with this person based on some of the personality traits that they have. Or vice versa, hey, this person is an extrovert, and these are some of the tools that you can use in order to work successfully with this person, because you know that. Again, hoping they have a self-awareness, but if they don't, how can we create that self-awareness pretty quickly? Because that's going to help us integrate as a team. Not saying that we have to be intrusive, not saying that we have to know every little, intricacy about each other, but
Yeah.
it's good to know, hey, Andrew likes this, or he doesn't like this, or he's an early bird, or he's a late riser, things of that sort. Not saying that it's going to make a difference either way. It just helps me as a leader really know how to get the best out of this person and see if they're a good fit for the organization.
Gotcha. Now, I appreciate that detailed breakdown. It definitely, I think, helps people kind of understand what people in leadership are looking for. And I know it may vary from person to person. You mentioned the introvert part. That is true. A lot of us are introverted in this space. I know networking events and things of that nature can be a big help for like growing your network and coming across different opportunities. Are there anything throughout your career that you can kind of recommend that other people maybe check out, whether it's like happy hour or, whatever the case may be?
Yeah, there are several organizations that, on LinkedIn, I know you're on LinkedIn, there are several organizations that you could follow. I'd say that would be a good first step.
Okay.
Once you start following those organizations that you're interested in. And then I would say, especially that, not that it's gone away, but I think that we at least have our arms around this whole COVID ordeal.
Yeah.
I would say if you can get to some networking events, I would say, put yourself out there. And I know it's uncomfortable for some, but I think when you get in that uncomfortable space, that's when you really grow.
Yeah.
And people need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And being uncomfortable is not going to always feel like it's uncomfortable. So once you go to one networking event, then you go to two, then you go to three, it's no longer going to be uncomfortable anymore. It's interesting because I went to a networking event and a guy, he had just got honorable discharge from the military, and he had only been out, I want to say 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And this was his very first networking event. He'd been in the military 17, 18
Completely
years.
different culture and
And I could just see in his body language, and he was just, I was like, just relax. He's like, I know, man, and I'm thinking about imposter syndrome, and I'm this director now. And I say, man, it's just another job. You're taking it way too serious, man. You're qualified. If you wasn't qualified, they wouldn't have given you the job.
yeah.
Yes, you're going from military into civilian life, but it's still life. It's not like you're living in a foreign country and you have no clue what they're talking about. It's just a different environment. And now I see him on LinkedIn, and he's commenting here. And I went to this place, and I was like, "Oh, you're an old pro now. That was only a couple of months ago."
That's all it takes, those reps. You don't get stronger from lifting the same weight.
That's exactly right.
You got to add some more weight on that bar.
Yeah,
Don't be
that's
scared
exactly
of it.
right. Yeah.
Throw that weight up.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I guess
So
a good
I would
point.
say get out there, and I think a lot of people are afraid of this imposter syndrome because there's a perception about, and I have to be careful with my words, about people who are in technology, in engineering, attorneys, doctors, that people are smarter than me.
Oh, okay. Yes, that is a perception.
Yeah, and it is. It's only a
I
perception.
don't know if you can say it, but I can say I've met some dummies that are in
I didn't
all
want to
these
go there.
professions.
Yeah, and it's people have, because you are a certain culture, because you are a certain race,
Yeah.
because you are a certain ethnicity, people automatically assume that you're smarter than them. And that I can tell you from firsthand experience that is not the case.
Yeah.
So if somebody has that fear of, hey, I don't want to look like the dumb person in the room, or they're going to start talking about cloud computing, they're going to start talking about IP addresses, they're going to start talking about masking this IP, they're going to start talking about cybersecurity. If they do, they do. I mean, and if you realize you don't know something, then what do I need to do to learn it? I mean, Google is a powerful tool.
There you go.
I mean, so don't be afraid that, hey, I don't know what's going to happen when I get to this, networking event, or hey, I don't want to look like the dummy in the room. Well, you're not. And a lot of times people don't realize, and it's funny, my daughter and I were just talking about this a couple of days ago. If you sit back and you observe and you listen, you will learn a lot about people, a whole lot. But if you are talking and you're the spotlight in the room, then you're probably not learning a whole lot. And I've always been the person that, I'm a great listener, and I listen more than I talk. And it's funny because my wife is like, we go places and people just gravitate to you and just start talking to you. I don't understand it. So we were at a dance competition, and my wife and my daughter were sitting in the audience there, and it wasn't enough room for me. So I said, I'm going to go stand over here by myself.
Yeah.
So I'm standing over there by myself. And they didn't see me until the show was over. By the time the show was over, it was a couple that was over there, then another couple that was over there. One couple had a few drinks. So, we were just sitting there talking. My wife was like, you over there sitting by yourself, not bothering anybody. Now you have the party of the whole convention over here. I was like, well, people just come up and talk to me, and I think it's because I'm a good listener, but I'm very attentive as well. I'm not listening to you just to hear you. I mean, I'm actually interested in hearing what you have to say. I think people can see that when we have those type of conversations. So when you go into these events, I mean, be sure that you read the room, if you will, and read body language, and don't be afraid. I mean, put yourself out there.
Yeah. Hey, great advice. Great advice. Hilarious comments in there. I can visualize all this. So I appreciate you sharing these things. I got 2 more questions for you before we close it out. The first one, man, this is a journey. And I think the more I get into my career, the more I kind of view it as like a marathon or a journey. And I know you're a runner as well. But I think sometimes people are just thinking like it's going to happen instantly. And when it doesn't, they get frustrated, they get discouraged. What can people do, or like, do you have any recommendations or advice for, how people can not get burnt out or not get discouraged along this journey? Whether it's, hey, I want to become a CIO, or whether it's, hey, I want to land my first job in tech, whatever the case is.
I would say a couple things. We talked about commitment and we talked about perseverance as well. But when you're getting into those valleys, if you will, I think that you need to always make sure that you're doing your part and make sure that you're taking the bull by the horns and making sure you're doing everything that you could absolutely do to position yourself for that opportunity. Some things we can control and some things we can't. I know, and you know as well, from a faith-based standpoint, it says that, faith without works is dead. So sometimes people have faith or they have hopes and wishes in some things, but they're sitting on the couch at the house thinking God's or somebody's just going to drop a job in their lap, right?
Yeah.
So be sure that you're doing everything you can do in order to position yourself for whatever opportunity that you're looking for. Is that, hey, do I have a network? Can I call somebody and say, hey, Marcus, how did you get to that role? Or do I need to take an online class? Do I need to read up on something? Do I need to, read up on some leadership skills? Do I need to go to some seminar? So what is it that you're doing? Be sure that you're always doing something when you're in those valleys. Because you'll get frustrated and you get to the point where you may have some bad leadership or you may have been passed over by a promotion. And I would say deal with those feelings and deal with those emotions and don't try to act like they don't exist. So, there have been some times in my career I was disappointed in some decisions that were made. I dealt with that from an emotional standpoint, but I only dealt with it to the point where I was ready to get up and get back in the game, right? So I would say don't wallow in your sorrow, if you will. Hey, yeah, it happened. Yes, I was disappointed. Yes, it was unfortunate. Now let's dust ourselves up, get back up in the game. And sometimes you have to take roles that don't necessarily feel like they're part of your journey. So I didn't go just from being a systems engineer to jumping into the CIO role, right? And there were some roles that frankly speaking, I wasn't necessarily interested in. But I knew that it was something that would be beneficial for me once I did get to that particular role. The finance class that we talked about. I could have very easily said, I'm not interested in the finance class.
Yeah.
But if I did that, then I'm put in the seat, say, hey, Marcus, we need you to create a CapEx and an OpEx budget. Now oh, wow, is he qualified?
Yeah. Yeah.
So be sure that you're positioning yourself and you're really strengthening your toolbox to prepare yourself for that next level.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, that's great advice. I said two, but I want to see if this is off limits. What's the lifestyle that can kind of come with this, like the CIO or the tech? Are we talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars at this level? Are we talking, being able to take your family on trips, like that kind of lifestyle, like just so people can kind of know a little bit about it?
Yes, and I think it varies. I can tell you that it's definitely a financial blessing, and I can tell you that it does provide stability for me and my family, which is one of the things that we talked about initially. Financial stability is very, very, very important, and it's one of those things where it's what you make it. And the reason I say that is because, and I'm not going to put a dollar amount out there because there are different, depending on the size of the organization that you work in, depending on the industry that you work in, and depending on your experience, there are different levels that you can go. I mean, you have some CIOs that's probably making, a couple $1 million. You have some that are probably making a couple $100,000. So I don't know of any that's not at least in the six-figure range, if that helps. But from a lifestyle standpoint, and this is just my personal opinion, regardless of what that dollar amount is, I think you need to be comfortable, like we talked about earlier, with who you are, right? You could have some CIOs that live in River Oaks because they want a CIO title and they want to live in River Oaks. Well, you have some that don't want to live in River Oaks. You have some that may, hey, I want to get a house in Katy and I want to have, a lot of money in the bank and I want to be able to go and do whatever I want to do. So it really just depends on, what is important to you, or you
Yeah.
may have some that, they say, hey, I'm going to be as frugal as I can because I want to leave everything for my kids. You have kids, I have kids. So it really just depends on your priorities. But I would say if you're compensated fairly, then it does give you financial freedom to where you could do those things. But, I don't think that and some executives feel like because now I'm in the C-suite, I have to have this house that costs this much, or I have to drive this type of car,
Yeah.
or I have to have my kids go to a private school, and
Yeah.
it is what it is. I'm not one of those, but that's just how some people operate.
That's a good point. There's always going to be some Joneses to keep up
Oh,
with.
absolutely,
And so
yeah.
I can picture the person that's like, hey, I got to, get rid of the Expedition and get the Range Rover. I got to, the same house I could get in Katy or somewhere else. I got to go to River Oaks and try to get the same size house and you'd be
Because
paying
I'm
10
in
times as
C-suite
much.
now, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's a good
yeah.
point. And the reason I asked that, it was kind of a setup because with the CIO or C-suite title, I'm sure additional responsibilities, additional time commitment. You've talked a lot about your family, your faith, and how those things are important to you. And there's no free lunch in life. With, additional responsibilities comes trade-off and more time you have to dedicate to the job. But with where you're at right now, would you say that the sacrifices and the decisions you have to make because of the job are worth it given the other sacrifices that come with other aspects of life?
I would say yes. There's, I've been fortunate and been blessed as well to where I was able to pick and choose kind of my path, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And the companies, and I don't think it was by accident, I don't think it's even by coincidence, the companies that I worked for really aligned with my morals and my values. And, so say for instance, my kids being in dance, I haven't missed a dance competition in almost 20 years.
Nice.
And there were some, opportunities where, I could have gone on, an executive retreat or missed my daughter's dance competition. That executive retreat was important to me and it probably would have helped my career trajectory. But being at that dance competition was more important to me than it was having my career, propelled faster than what it already had been going. So there were a few times where I had to make that decision, and I've always made my decision based on my morals and based on my values. And I would recommend anybody do that because, loyalty is one thing, but companies start, companies close their doors. People get hired, people get laid off. So, not saying that you shouldn't be committed, but I would say make those decisions based on your personal values. And somebody's personal values may be, hey, I want to make as much money as I can, as quick as I can.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go to the retreat and I'm going to sacrifice my family. If that's your personal choice, that's up to you, and that may work out for you. But I would say, whatever your values are, I would let that be kind of my guiding light when it comes to making those type of decisions. Now, there have been some situations to where, I get a call at 2:00 in the morning because we had a website to go down, or, the data center's having problems. That's just the nature of the beast, right? But when it comes to making fundamental decisions that are based on whether I have to do this or I have to do that, I think, again, your morals and your values and what's important to you is really the thing that should really be that guiding light. And if it's not, then you may need to find either something that does align with both or a company that aligns with both. Because, of course, based on expectations, if you're starting to, not necessarily perform in the job because you're spending too much time with the family, that's going to eventually bleed over into the family, especially if you don't have a job anymore, right? So it's a balance, but I think based on what's important to you is really how you should handle those situations. I don't think it's a right or wrong answer or a cookie cutter answer, but I think those are some of the things that at least you should consider.
Good. Hey, I love it, man. I don't know if this will be the title, but Marcus Manning, a man of integrity. That's kind of the way I summarize this, man. I think you know who you are more than anything and what you stand for and what you believe in. And I think that's kind of been a common theme throughout your life. I think the only flaw that I can see from the outside looking in is that you're a fan of these trash Texans, and it's just unfortunate that that's the decision that you've made to be that type of man. But other than that, man, it's been phenomenal.
I think they have trash up Dallas up 45 too. So I think.
I don't know, man. Them
our
five
trash is-
Lombardis say otherwise, but
Somebody else's trash is somebody else's treasure too. So our trash is starting to turn into treasure
all
at
right.
some point.
So, let's pray it's in our lifetime, Marcus. Let's
That's
just do
right.
that. But nah, man, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming on. A lot of great insight. I appreciate you sharing all the wisdom. Phenomenal journey that you've had. What's next? CEO?
That's a good question.
CEO?
That's a good
Okay.
question. That's a great question. There have been some conversations about, I long story short, I know I keep saying long story short, but I have an executive coach, and that was one of the topics that came up here recently. She was like, "Have you ever thought about?"
Hey, man.
I said, "No, I haven't." She's like, "I think you should think about it." I said, "Okay."
It may be like that account exec role. You didn't really necessarily say, okay, hey, I want to be the leader.
Right.
But
right. Yeah.
you got the business acumen. You got the technological expertise.
Yeah. So we'll see where it goes. We'll see.
Cool. Stay tuned for part 2 where Marcus Manning is CEO of. But nah, man, it's been great, man.
Likewise, man. I really enjoyed the conversation. Really did.
For sure. I always try to get a guest any last minute shout outs or anything I missed on. And then also just kind of let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah. So just to wrap it up, again, some of the highlights that we talked about, of course, self-awareness, don't compromise who you are for what you strive for. Always stay grounded in what your beliefs, whatever they are, not judging either way, but always stay grounded. And do know that life is short. So, especially with the pandemic that's going on and everything else that's going on in the world right now. So live life with no regrets. So I'm on LinkedIn. Like I said, I'm not a big social media fan because I know what goes on behind it because I'm in the cybersecurity space. But you can find me on LinkedIn, Marcus Manning, if you want to send me a DM or something, and we can chat. So.
Cool. Hey, man, it's perfect. Look, it's been a blast. Y'all need to subscribe, stay tuned, all that. I know you guys gained a lot of value from this episode with Marcus. I appreciate you guys watching and staying tuned. And as always, I'll be back next week with more great content. Take care. Peace.